Hey, Boog bounce back week was a success. Let's keep it going. We may have a football commit incoming. Jeremy Garrett's on the way out, and let's have some basketball talk. This is episode 16 of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Five. Let's get it going. But before we do, we want to give a shout out to our buddy Ford Stokes at Active Wealth Management, who's here to help Auburn fans in general, but everybody help grow, get to where they want to be as far as their retirement, savings, things like that. Check him out, activewealth.com. He'll give you a custom plan to help guide you to where you want to be in the future. So big Auburn fan, loves the Boog. So give him a shout out, tell him War Eagle, and he'll help you get on the right track. If you were paying attention last night, we're recording. This is Tuesday. If you're paying attention last night, you saw that a couple of Auburn coaches put out their bat signals. You had Coach Logan Bradley, and then the tight ends coach, Ben. I don't want to butcher his last name. I'm just not going to attempt it. I'm just going to call him Ben A. Coach Ben. They put out a tweet, sort of their bat signals, the eyes. Typically, that means when it comes from the position coach, you're typically going to get a commit from that position. So it looks like you're possibly, maybe by the time you're listening to this or a little bit later in the day, probably going to land a commitment from a big-time tight end out of Georgia named Hollis Davidson. If you look him up, that's who I'm guessing it is anyway. If you look him up, he's 6'4", 230 from Peachtree City, Georgia. He's a 4-star on Rivals. I don't think a lot of the 2025 class is still being ranked. A 4-star on Rivals. He's unranked in a couple other sites. That's going to change soon because once you start committing, that's when people start getting eyes on you and you start watching film from, other recruiting sites and things like that. And then you're going to have your spring evaluations, your summer camp series and things like that. The biggest thing is Auburn loses a ton of tight ends this year. You lose your Rivaldo Fairweather. I believe you lose Brandon Frazier. You lose your Luke Deal, who's been here seemingly just a shade under a decade. And he's played great while he's been here. But you lose a ton. You lose a ton. And then all you have left coming back is just your portal guy, Rico Walker, because you did not sign a tight end in the 2023 class. The 2024 class. You did not sign a tight end. So this was going to be a year where you took at least two, maybe three if they're a lot of different skill sets. And you got two good ones right now. You got Ryan Gee, who is going to be more of your traditional hand on the ground type tight end that you got to have. And he's also a receiving threat, probably very similar to maybe a little bit more athletic Luke Deal type, maybe more of a Tyler Fromm-ish type tight end. And then you're going to have Hollis Davidson, who is a little bit more of a receiving threat, a little bit more well-rounded. If you watch his huddle, he lines up out wide a ton or in the slot off the ball a good bit, catches a lot of passes down the field, catches a lot of stuff over the middle, just your typical what you see now in college football out of your tight end that's a receiving tight end, a guy that can get across the middle, a guy that can make those tough catches in traffic. And this guy looks like he could be fit that to a T. So when you got him, you're going to have Rico Walker in a room with Ryan Gee moving forward. It's a lot of young, a lot of very, very skilled guys at the tight end position. Really, really like what we're doing here from portal additions, high school, and you got all your skill sets you need. The tight end in this offense, if you remember last year, is crucial in the run game. So you definitely need your guys that are willing to get down and dirty, and then you're going to need your guys that can take maybe not necessarily take the top off, but they can be a threat that people are going to have to keep eyes on. You're going to have to keep bodies on when they're on the field, because you just never know when they could pop. So I really, really like what we're doing there. He actually came in over the weekend. We had sort of like a low-key monster. I I guess you want to call it a junior day. Not necessarily a marketed junior day, but low key, you had an incredible weekend as far as top end talent. You had 6 top 100 players come in over the weekend, and several that left extremely high on Auburn. I really thought we would probably get a couple of more commits out of it, and it may be that we're gonna sort of drip them out, sort of let people have people have their moment. Like let Hollis, maybe Hollis is going to have his moment today. And then you had guys like Anquan Fagans, who we talked about on the last show, who just says Auburn is special. Auburn's basically number one. I love it. Maybe he goes. And then you had Travaris Dice, who is probably one of your top offensive tackle targets, brought his whole family. And that was massive, because I think that was one of the last things that he had on his list that he wanted to do before he made his decision. So a lot of momentum. This one, we had a little dry spell. You had a decommitment over the weekend that I guess we weren't really necessarily expecting. So you need some momentum. You need to grab some momentum back. Have the big weekend, get a commit, maybe get a couple more over the next, 7 to 14 days, and sort of, grab the reins back and get everybody pumped again. You go from 8 commits to 7. You lose your big safety, who there's no real way to sugarcoat it. It's a big loss. And you lose him to Gus at Central Florida, which I think was sort of a shock. Kendarius Riddick had a good relationship with Trevon, so you got to feel like maybe there was a connection there. And he was real quiet. You never really heard a ton about him. You never really heard a ton out of him either. Just all of a sudden, he flips, goes to Central Florida. I'm going to be shocked if he ends up there. Maybe he does, but it just seems something's off. Something's a little weird about that whole situation. But regardless, we need some momentum. You had another commit, another kid, Naeem Offord, the number 1 player in Alabama that you thought you sat really well with. I think they're probably going to have to do a little bit of not damage control, but build back some bridges after you lose Cadillac, you lose Zach. Those were 2 of his big recruiters, his big, I guess, guys that he looked at. Naeem commits to Ohio State, somebody that we really, really wanted, somebody that Auburn really, really wants and really, really needs. You need another, as many of those lockdown, however you want to call it, corners as you can possibly get. And Naeem is very important. I don't think this recruitment's over. He's going to be very open and very receptive to the staff. He's only less than 2 hours away, probably going to be back on campus multiple times over the summer and definitely to several games in the fall. So I wouldn't give up on that one quite yet. I just don't, I'm not sold that it's a done deal to Ohio State, but they are recruiting at an incredibly high level. You saw that they decided they're going to get serious in the portal, and landed just a slew of dudes in the portal, and they're not playing around right now. So it's not like it's just going to be easy. But again, I just think in the end, I kind of expect him to be back in the class, or to be in Auburn's class. Maybe not back in the class because he never was, but I would expect that's one that we'd say we've got penciled. Hey, we're not letting him leave the state. So it's been kind of slow. It's been kind of slow from a commit perspective. It's not been slow from a visit perspective, from a noise, hype perspective. There's been a ton of dudes come to Auburn. There's been coaches all over the trail in houses. It's the dead period right now. So you may start to see the news sort of, I guess, subside for a little bit. You're not going to see Hugh Freeze in high schools. You're not going to see Hugh Freeze taking pictures out and, with recruits and things like that, or any of the other coaches, because they can't right now. They just can't. They can't leave campus. And I don't believe recruits can even come to campus at the moment. It's just going to be phone and texting and stuff like that. And that's what Hugh Freeze he's going to max out everything he possibly can. Whatever the rules are, they're going to max it out. They're going to max it out. So recruiting is still not necessarily not a one-hit wonder. You still have a really good class so far. You still got a lot of momentum. You're should have a commit incoming here any minute. Maybe like I said, by the time you're listening to this, by a highly rated tight end, maybe over the next week or two, we can roll off a couple more and get the ball rolling again. So recruiting's going well. We're going to have a little bit of a speed bump we need to talk about. We're going to talk about next that we're going to have to overcome. But so far, so good. But before we do that, let's give a shout out to plainscoffee.com. Use coupon code BUTTON for 10% off freshly ground coffee sent right to your door. There's no need to have your shelves stocked with the big crates, big buckets of coffee that are months old. Go ahead and order your coffee and have it ground the day before it ships, sent to your door. You can smell that fresh aroma coming from the doorstep, and you can pick all kinds of different flavors, blends, whatever. I saw one, they got one called like the coffee blend, cowboy blend. No idea what that is, but it sounds awesome. But if you don't like coffee, they even have tea. So check them out. They got something for everybody at plainscoffee.com. Use coupon code BUTTON, save 10%. So the last show, I talked about how elite our staff was, top to bottom, especially the defensive staff. And honestly, one of the big reasons that I felt like this staff was so elite is because of the emergence of Jeremy Garrett on the trail. He has been an absolute star. He comes in, he gets a couple of big guys from the portal. He goes out, signs 3 or 4 top interior guys, helps out with a couple of high ranked outside edge type guys, and then he's already got 4 studs, absolute studs, committed already this year, already for 2025 moving forward. So your defensive line class is almost complete already. You may look to add one more true interior defensive guy, and then you're looking for pass rushers. You're looking for pass rusher guys. I mentioned that he had kind of he'd been talking with some NFL teams, the Jags in particular. Honestly, at that point in time, there was no offer, and I honestly thought we were going to be okay. I thought we were going to be okay. I thought it was just typical putting feelers out there, and there wasn't really a ton to worry about. But turns out, you already know this, but Jeremy Garrett takes the defensive line coach job position in Jacksonville, and it's a big blow. It's a big blow. One that's not just going to be just super easy to replace, just because of the relationships. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that moving forward. It's going to be tough to replace. It's not impossible, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and there's going to have to be some build back of relationships. You hate to see 1-year turnover, especially a young guy who's got just gobs of potential. But the good thing is he can go to the NFL, get even more experience, develop his skills, and maybe this guy could be a defensive coordinator at Auburn down the road, because he is an absolute star. One thing that I've never seen when a coach leaves, I've never seen this. And for the most part, I don't think head coaches would even want this. I don't even think they would really want this if it's anybody other than Jeremy Garrett and any other loyalty other than his to Hugh Freeze. So you had the big recruiting weekend. You had several of your defensive line actual commits come into town. And who's there to greet them? Who's there to talk to them? Jeremy Garrett. I think that just speaks so much volumes, so highly of who he is and the character that he has to stay back and level with the guys that he brought. He got in the class. He got committed to talk to those guys, let them know the deal, let them know they need to still stick with Auburn, let them know that he's going to still be available to talk, to have that relationship. But I've just never seen that before, because typically when guys leave, it may be a little bit I guess less uncommon for jumps to the NFL, especially in a time in the NFL where it's kind of off-season ish. There's not a lot to do for the Jags because they're not playing for the Super Bowl. It's not spring training. I mean, there's just not a lot going on. So he's not necessarily going to have to report immediately. So he had time to maybe stay in Auburn. And one big guy in particular was Jordan Crawford came in, and that's one of your bell cows from Parker, your defensive lineman from Parker. Jeremy Garrett was the first guy to meet him out front. I just think that, I don't know, that blew me away. That would really impress me that he was willing to do that. So kudos to him for hanging back and showing how much he cares about Hugh Freeze, showing how much he actually cares about these guys, these commits, the players that he brought in. That's not just he's not just churning and burning and bringing in dudes and selling, and there's nothing behind the words. He means what he says, and he preached it this weekend. And I think that's going to make a huge impact. I think that's going to make a very, very big impact. One guy that I was really hoping would come, but he actually went to Alabama, was Antonio Coleman. If you remember, Antonio Coleman was an Alabama commit that was flipped. So everybody was very, very nervous. Okay, Jeremy Garrett's out. He was one of the main drivers to get that flip. And he's visiting Alabama this weekend. Could he flip back? Could he decommit and then just open it back up between the two? But he goes, he takes his pictures, does the things that everybody does on a visit. And then he does an interview and he straight up says, "My heart's still at Auburn." I think that's a huge bullet dodged. Does not mean it's not over. I'm sorry. Doesn't mean that it's over. They're still going to battle. That's still going to be a battle. That's not only an important kid to have for your program, for your depth, but it's also an important perception battle. If DeBoer wants to make a statement, go pick off some Auburn commits, or go pick off some of the, lock in some of the top 10 players in the state, and Antonio Coleman's one of them. So for him to come out of that visit, still committed to Auburn, not decommitted, I think that's huge. And I wouldn't be shocked if Jeremy Garrett's already been on the phone with him and already talked with him. But big loss there. Where do we go from here? There's a couple of guys that have been thrown around. You got, obviously, it seems like every time there's a defensive line a line position open, everybody wants to bring back Rodney Garner, which, he was unbelievable at Auburn, unbelievable recruiter, just well known as a top defensive line coach. I don't know that that's going to happen. I just don't see that. I don't know that. I think Hugh is going to want to go younger. I think he's probably going to want to go a little bit younger, like it just worked out with Jeremy Garrett. There's several dudes that have been thrown around. One is maybe like a Kyle Pope, who's a guy. He was just hired actually at Georgia Tech this past offseason, but he has a connection with Hugh. He has a connection with some of the guys from Liberty. He was at Memphis after Liberty, was hired at Georgia Tech. He's another young, energetic Jeremy Garrett type. They even got the same beard. Like they look almost they look almost like the same guy. If you do look up press conferences, they sound a lot alike. You could go there. There could be a relationship that you maybe let DJ Durkin bring a guy in. If you have that open slot and he has the relationship and it's somebody that kind of fits the culture and the mold of what you want to do, maybe you let DJ Durkin bring in a guy or use some of your connections with, a Charles Kelly or somebody else on staff to bring in a young gun recruiter, because I think that's what you're going to need. If you have some huge shoes to fill with Jeremy Garrett leaving. There's been some talk that there's been names thrown out, but it's been really quiet since then. Typically, you'll see some candidates start to emerge. There again, it's really just been names that have been thrown out. But there's been talk that there may be an offer out to someone. Don't really know who it is. I assume if that's actually true and that's the case, that should start to show itself pretty soon. And I would say you really need someone in quickly, because you got to start game planning for spring. Spring starts in like 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, it starts at I think right around the beginning of March, maybe into February. So at least your team meetings and things like that. So you need to have somebody in. And then when spring opens, you're going to start having your evaluation periods with high school recruits. So you need to get a guy in to go ahead and start hitting the phones, go ahead and start making rounds to when he can to help build, again, start rebuild some of those relationships, make sure you can keep some of the guys on board, show your vision of what you see, how you're going to develop them, how you're going to use them, things of that nature, because not only do you have a new defensive line coach, but you have a new defensive coordinator as well. So a lot of change. Not all change is bad. It's not going to be impossible to replace Jeremy Garrett, but it's not going to be easy either. It's not going to be easy either. So he's going to be great. His career trajectory is just incredible already to the NFL, and he's going to do great things in the NFL, and hopefully he could possibly be a defensive coordinator or at least a co-DC down the road. And that's kind of how you do. You bring in young guys, you develop them, they go elsewhere. That's how coaching trees are born. That's why you see these older guys. It just seems like they have all these different relationships, and they can, a guy leaves and they can bring in a new one that they have some sort of tie to, and it's easy. This is part of it. So I assume Will Redmond, our GM of player personnel, I believe, he did a lot of coaching, scouting, and stuff like that, contract work and talking with agents at LSU. He's probably going to be helping on this situation as well. So I know the defensive coordinator deal drug out. I think that's sort of an anomaly because of contract situations with Chris Kiffin and then trying to work through the DJ Durkin stuff. So I don't necessarily see this being another 2-month process. Probably be something pretty quick, but it'll be fun to see. I love coaching searches are fun. But at the same time, it's a lot more fun when you're not losing a dude like Jeremy Garrett. So I'm already sad that he's leaving, but I'm anxious to see who we bring in to fill the shoes. So that'll be something interesting to watch moving forward. All right. So last week, I deemed it at the beginning of the week, Boog bounce back week. We had the week prior, we had 2 tough road losses, close losses, shot terribly, but played great defense, held teams to under their league their averages. We just couldn't score. And recruiting was quiet. Still hadn't had a defensive coordinator. We needed energy. We needed a Boog bounce back week, and basketball provided that in the most awesome way with 2 huge wins. Vanderbilt at home, you blew the doors off Vanderbilt, really should have won by 30 plus. Then you go to Oxford where they're undefeated at home, sellout crowd, electric atmosphere. You go down early, and then you just come absolutely roaring back and score 50-plus points in the second half and just shut everybody up and blow their doors off. Ended with an emphatic dunk by by KD that received a technical foul, but it's probably the best technical foul of the year. And I totally let it slide. I totally let it slide. When you're up 16 and you can get a tech off of a dunk with 2 or 3 seconds left, I say always take it, especially on the road. Take it. Just do it for the exclamation point. As long as it doesn't cause you to be suspended, do it. Take it every time, because that just puts a knife right through the heart. And that's what we needed. We needed last week. And the great thing about last week is we shot the ball incredible from three. Shot like 44% on the road, which is, I can't even explain how excited that makes me feel, because the way these guys play defense, if they're shooting threes, they are going to beat your eyes out every single time. I mean, you look, every single win in conference this year so far has been double digits. It's wild. It's wild. You still wonder, hey, can you win a close game? But if you don't have to have close games, don't have them. If you can just go out there and shoot and beat people by 10 plus points, go beat people by 10 plus points. Those games are fun to watch. There's no stress. You're just high-fiving and fist pumping, and you're just loving the threes raining down. You're loving the dunks. I can't say enough about this team, man. I love the mixture. I love that everybody can shoot threes for the most part. You got Broom just absolutely lighting it up from three right now. He's got to be over 50% or around 50% from three in conference. That's not something that we expected, but it's something you're starting to see him have more attempts, which in turn will open a lot of things up. When the big man can come away from the basket and he can hit threes, that spreads things out. It sort of inverts your offense, allows some of your smaller guys some space to get to the hole, and allows guys like Chad Baker-Mazar to be able to slash and gash and score at the rim. So I feel like last week was I don't want to say a peak, but last week was a good bounce back, a good step forward to what is going to be another tough week, another big week, a very important week. You play Alabama at home, and then you have to go on the road at Florida, a place where you just don't typically play very well. So the Alabama game, obviously, you don't have to say much more than it's just Alabama. That should be enough. But you're also playing for number one in the SEC. I'm not really sure how the tiebreaker works, but it's what everybody you're playing for first in the SEC. So you feel like you left so much on the bone. You left so much meat on the bone there in Tuscaloosa 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, that you had a chance to win it late and you shot just absolutely terrible. You come back home, you're going to be in your home environment where you're comfortable shooting the ball. You're coming off 2 big wins with a ton of confidence. It's a massive, massive game. We need this one. You need this one. And then if you win this one and then you go on the road to Florida, who's playing incredible offensive basketball right now, you got to feel like the confidence. All right, we can win against the better teams in the conference. We can win on the road against good teams in the conference. Let's go to Florida and break this streak. I think I was listening to the post game. At some point in time. Actually, I think I was listening to Zach and Daryl, and it's somewhere around like 1996 that is the last time we've won there, which is kind of crazy to think about. 17, 18 years. I would love to go into Florida and if nothing else, I just want to go into Florida and shoot the ball well. Even if you don't win the game, I want to go score the basketball. If we go lose 90 to 85 or something like that, I'm not going to be necessarily upset, because our bugaboo, where we struggle on the road is when we go on the road and we just can't shoot. We can't score. And those losses that we've had, just have been, just incredibly poor showings on the offensive end. So this is a huge week. This is a very, very big week. And I mean, I guess every week really moving forward is going to be big, but this one in particular, because you got the Iron Bowl, you're playing for number 1 in the SEC. You're playing to try to have a chance to end a long drought on the road at Florida. And both of those are more than likely going to be the Alabama game for sure is going to be a quad 1 win. Not really sure how Florida sits. That's a moving target in and of itself, but any road game on the SEC is big, and they're playing good basketball right now too. So huge week for the Tigers. You come in, you're back up to number 12 in the AP poll. So this Alabama game is going to be it'll be a top 20 matchup. So there's going to be a lot of cameras, a lot of eyes on it. Great for your resume. And then, like I said, then you go to Florida, and then you got to, you think, okay, we got through this week. Then next week you have Kentucky and South Carolina. Now you get both of them. You get both of them at home, but those are both going to be, your South Carolina is going to be a ranked matchup. Kentucky's going to be more than likely a ranked matchup. So you get over this hurdle, and then you got to turn around and you got to go over another huge hurdle. Luckily, you get both of those at home. So we're coming down the stretch here. We're a little bit over the halfway mark in conference play. We still have all of our goals, all of our aspirations ahead of us. So this week's big to sort of, this week's big to just sort of keep that momentum going. There was nothing more that I could enjoy than watching us light up Ole Miss in that second half. You're down 9 and you come back. You hit the big 3 before the end of the half. Denver hit the big 3 before the end of the half, and then you come out and you keep it going. Broome, I don't even think scored in the first half, so you knew he was going to just at the end of the game, you knew he was going to have at least 14, 15 points, and he did, and he hit a couple of big threes. So it's just a fun team all around. I feel like the young guys are getting better, the guards are getting better, and then you still got your Jalen, who's still having his big season, although he seems like he's over the week he had last week or 2 weeks ago on the road trip. And then you got Chad Baker-Mazara locking the doors, kicking the coaches out. No telling what he said in Spanish, English, broken English, whatever. There's no telling what he said, but whatever he said worked. And it's cool to see leadership and stuff like that. And that Ole Miss at halftime could have been a huge turning point for the season moving forward. So basketball is hot right now, and we got a really good team. I think that can make a run, obviously in the SEC, and then hopefully, a little run, maybe end up being somewhere between a 2 and a 4 seed, and make a little run in the tournament. So it's amazing what Bruce has done here, and this year is just another example of how he's how he's transformed and built this basketball program. So a lot of fun. Let's lock in tomorrow night and let's get this win against Alabama, and then let's talk about it on Thursday. So, guys, I really appreciate it. Sorry, I was a little bit under the weather last night, so I had to jump on and knock it out this morning and get the conversation going and get the book going for this week. So, I appreciate you guys listening. Again, this is you can follow me on Twitter at @the_Charlie_5. We're here Tuesdays and Thursdays. I do the Locked on Auburn podcast on Tuesdays. So you get to listen to me twice on Tuesdays. If you're just crazy and you're a glutton for punishment, you can listen to me twice on Tuesdays. So I really appreciate it. This is episode 16 of the Top Button Podcast. Stay buttoned.